joined us from different part of the world. And it's really an exciting webinar which IEEE Telecom and Connectivity Practice has brought to us. So as we all have seen, the title of this particular webinar is 6G. It's really a buzzword now because we are seeing 5G deployment already taking place. So 6G is really a buzz now and very relevant for rural connectivity. So this particular webinar is mostly based on a recent book that was published by the authors who also happen to be the speakers for today's webinar. The title of the book is 6G Sustainable Development for Rural and Remote Communities. So my first thought about the title, it talks a lot about sustainability, and generally when we talk about rural communication, our focus generally goes towards the technology. Whether it was any generation of technology, we generally focus on more of the technical aspect. But though we have 5G coming in, the recent ITU report, if we see, there are more than 2.9 billion population who still lacks meaningful connectivity. So whether technology is really a challenge or there are more aspects to connect the unconnected, and where the sustainability aspect comes becomes very important. And that's why this particular webinar brings a good mix of technological aspect, but at the same time look that particular aspect from sustainability aspect, from human computer interaction aspect, also from use case aspects. So I highly recommend all to have a look at the book which has been published, and I think in due course the link and other things will be shared by the author speakers. We have lined up all the authors, Sudhir, Vimal, Anuj, Sajram. I think they are expert in their research domains in their fields. They come from huge research background in this particular area. So we are going to hear Sudhir talking about the sustainability aspect, the SDG goals which has been defined, and how 6G become relevant. Similarly, from Vimal and Anuj, we will have deep insight into the technological aspect, the fiber, how it is very important in a rural context. And through Sajram, I think we will have more human interaction, human touch, how technology adoption is not really taking place in rural areas, whether it is actually a technological challenge or there are more part to it. So I am really happy to be able to moderate this particular webinar through my affiliation to IEEE. And I think we can kickstart. We have around 40 minutes for the presentation from all distinguished speakers. And then we will go to a 20-minute moderated question answer session. And at the same time, we recommend all the participants to keep sending their questions in Q&A, which we are going to take at the end 20 minutes. So this particular webinar is going to be for 1 hour 30 minutes. So I really recommend all to utilize it, send their questions. We will try to take up as many questions possible. But I want to assure that whatever questions we will not be able to take, we will send it to speakers, and the response can be sent or it can be published suitably for including all the Q&A. So with this, I think it's time to now listen from the distinguished speakers. So I want to start with Sudhir Dikshit. I'm going to just read the bio. and after that, I'll request Sudhir to take over the presentation right and present his talk today. So, Sudhir Dixit, as we all know, is a co-founder, a senior fellow, and evangelist at Basic Internet Foundation in Oslo, Norway, and heads its US operation. He is also a docent at University of Oulu, Finland, where he works on 6G flagship project funded by Academy of Finland. From 2015 to 17, he was the CEO and co-founder of a startup, Skydoot. From 2009 to 15, he was a distinguished chief technologist and CTO of communication and media services for the American region of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Service in Palo Alto, and the director of Hewlett-Packard Labs in India, Bangalore. So before joining HP, he held various engineering and leadership positions at BlackBerry, Nokia, NSN, NYNEX, which is currently Verizon Communication. He was a technical editor of IEEE Communication magazine. He was an editorial board of IEEE Spectrum magazine. He's a co-chair of CTU working group. If few of you are not aware, there is a Connecting the Unconnected working group at IEEE FNI. And he is presently a board member, working group chair and vice chair of Americas at Wireless World Research Forum, WWRF. Don't get confused with WWF, it is WWRF, and he is presently on the editorial board of Springer's Wireless Personal Communication Journal. He's a co-chair of CTU working group at INGR in IEEE Future Network Initiative. Sudhir has published 9 books. He holds 21 US patents and published extensively in numerous peer-reviewed journal and conference. In 2018, he was appointed a distinguished lecturer by IEEE Communication Society. And from 2010 to 12, he was an adjunct professor of computer science at University of California, Davis. And since 2022, he is also a Vajra adjunct professor at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. A life fellow of IEEE, fellow of IETE, Dixit hold a PhD from University of Scotland, Glasgow, UK, and MBA from Florida Institute of Technology, Melbourne, Florida. He received his ME from BITS Pilani, and most importantly for me, his BE from MNIT, MSCT Bhopal. So it's very nice. So I invite Sudhir to please take us through his presentation and talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. I hope you and everybody can see my slide here and can hear me clearly. Am I
can
visible?
You go into full screen mode? That will be useful.
This is what it is showing. Okay. Is this better?
Yeah, great.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thank you, Sandeep. You took a very long time to introduce me, which cut into my presentation time. But thank you anyway. So basically, this webinar is about 6G sustainable development for rural and remote communities. And as Munir and Sandeep mentioned, we have about 4 presentations on different aspects of 6G in the context of SDG and rural connectivity. So in my part here, over the next 8 to 10 minutes, I will talk only about the sustainability part, sustainability and SDG, with very little technical component in my presentation. Before I do that, I'd like to thank IEEE Standards Association, in particular Munir, for inviting me to be a panelist. So thank you, Munir. And it has always been a pleasure working with you and the rest of the IEEE organization. Okay, so the outline of my talk very quickly is, as both Munir and Sandeep mentioned, this presentation, my presentation and the presentation of my colleagues who are the panelists, is based on the book that we just published about 3 months ago on sustainable development for rural and remote communities. I will touch upon what is sustainability and sustainability development goals. As we all know, sustainability is a very broad term, and it can cover almost everything under the sky. But so I'll touch upon the definition of it that is used most of the time. What is the impact of generations of technologies, especially of wireless, on the users around the world, especially in the developing part of the world? Remote and rural communities, what are some of the unique requirements and solutions? Access to affordable internet as enabler to SDGs. So I'll make a case, and you probably already know that meeting goals of the SDGs, Sustainability Development Goals, is just not possible unless connectivity is available to everybody around the world at an affordable cost. And then just making connectivity is not enough. We have to build the capacity, the human capacity, to be able to consume capabilities that are being made available. Whether you're traveling, whether you're drawing money from the bank, or you're depositing merchandise. Then I'll talk about Internet Lite. And about the IEEE Future Network Initiative, which has a working group on connecting the unconnected that Sandeep and Munir touched upon. So this is the book that we just published. You can Google it and look at the content of it, and send us any feedback, comments you have about the content of the book, good or bad. Both will be well received by us. Okay, so there are five main concepts that I want to talk about in my presentation. What is sustainability and sustainability development goals? Impact of generations of technologies on digital divide. I know that when we go from one generation to next generation, always the focus is on developing on the technical objectives, technical KPIs. But as we go from one generation to the next generation, it leaves a lot of people behind. And that has happened from when we went from 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G, and that is likely to happen when we go to 6G. So in my presentation, what I will focus is on that we should also have KPIs that include the social impact. Not only providing more and more bandwidth, lower and lower latency, and higher mobility, and so on and so forth. Okay, I already touched upon these things. Okay. And finally, this the concept of providing connectivity to everybody, digital capability, is aligned very much with the IEEE mission of technology for humanity. And nothing would happen unless we have standards in place. Modi talked about thousands and thousands of standards that IEEE has developed. But we need standards when it comes to providing connectivity to rural and remote areas, because the manufacturers won't produce products unless there are standards in place. We won't have massive production and get economies of scale without standards. So standards are paramount for anything going into the marketplace, as we all know. So what is sustainability? The very broad definition of sustainability is, aside from the digital aspect, it has nothing to do with digital, but digital becomes one of the big enablers to achieving the goal of sustainability. So the definition of sustainability is that it consists of fulfilling the needs of current generations without compromising the needs of future generations, while ensuring a balance between economic growth, environmental care, planet, and social well-being of people. If we focus entirely on economic growth, then it will affect our environment, and it will also create economic divide. So we need to keep a clear balance. We don't want to consume all the resources on our planet, because we need to worry about the future generations, our children, our children's children, and so on and so forth. So the definition of sustainability is based on three main pillars: economic growth, environmental care, and social well-being. These are the three main pillars. But then if you research the field, that people have also defined 4, 5, 6 principles or pillars of sustainability as well. So it is all over the place. But fundamentally, these are the three things that I touched upon that you will find everywhere. So because of the need to build our planet sustainable and to fulfill the needs of these three pillars, United Nations always have had some agenda or the other, even before 2015. But when their programs ended at 2015, they defined in a very formal way some sustainability targets for 17 key areas that are defined here, and I have no time to go into that, but you can go and Google these. No poverty, no hunger, good health, quality education, and so on and so forth, equal justice, gender equality, and so on and so forth. And each of them were assigned some measurable metrics and a time frame when they were to be achieved. Some were assigned higher priorities than others, but they all came with certain time frame and also some measurement criteria as to how these goals are being achieved. So that was the difference between what was happening before 2015 and what started to happen after 2015. And if you would rather listen to what the experts are saying, I would rather like you to read this book. The Price of Inequality for us as a society is huge. How today's divided society endangers our future. We will have more crime, we will have poor health because of not having good environment and so on and so forth. So this is the impact of having the digital divide. Health information, education, decent work, equality, future, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you go into the bank, if you're traveling from one country to another country, everything has become so digitalized. Whether you go to the UK or go to US or Europe, there is nobody sitting at the immigration. You have to scan your passport. And you have to enter your biometrics is being utilized, and people who are not literate, it's very hard for people to deal with these kind of digital capabilities that they are required to have. So the price of inequality is huge if there is a digital divide. That's the point here. Then it has been said that we can't reach the UN goals for sustainable development without the internet. Because building hospitals is very expensive, building schools is very expensive, building roads is very expensive. However, connecting people through internet and providing knowledge and information is a lot cheaper over fiber or over microwave or wireless connectivity, so that we empower people with the information. I don't think the governments can make a difference. It has to happen in an organic manner. We need to empower people. We need to provide all that free information that is available to people at the grassroots level. Then things will begin to happen. So that is very, very important. We all know that. So unfortunately, internet had the ability to dismantle the divide, but internet has failed miserably. The divide is bigger than ever, and that happens whenever we have gone from one generation of wireless technology to the next. So what digital divide really means, I don't have the time here, but as Sandeep mentioned, that digital divide threatens our society. There are still 3 billion people still unconnected. There is a huge cost for the society, and it is hampering innovation. These 3 billion people are not contributing to the innovation ecosystem. Because they don't have the purchasing power and they don't have the ability to adapt innovations. And these people who are living in remote and rural areas, they are very innovative people as well. So what happened in July of 2018, United Nations created a high-level panel on digital cooperation, and with the two co-chairs, Jack Ma from China and Melinda Gates from the US, and it had 18 members, and they published a report in June of 2019. They had 5 recommendations, and there are 2 recommendations which are very relevant to us from the connectivity point of view. One of them is called 1A, which says we recommend that by 2030 every adult should have affordable access to digital network, as well as enablement to financial and health services as a means to make substantial contribution to achieving the SDGs. The other one was we recommend that a broad multi-stake alliance be there involving the United Nations to create a platform for sharing digital public goods. Digital public goods here basically means information that is made available free of cost, whether video or text or images, and that is made available free of cost over the internet, where the bytes and bits are not counted in the data plans, and that we call knowledge platform. So this picture basically shows that when the goals of 5G were being put forth, it had three main vertices. One of
Sorry
them
to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
So we have 3 minutes more.
Okay, I'll finish up. Yeah, sure. So it had the goal of enhanced mobile broadband, massive machine type communication, ultra reliable and low latency communications. But unfortunately, it did not have one of the objectives of connectivity for all. And as we go from 5G, now 5G is being deployed all over the world. Commercially, it started getting deployed in 2020, and now people have begun to talk about 6G. So we don't, as collectively, as the technologists or policymakers, we don't want to forget to include the connectivity for all as one of the goals and objectives of the standard as we go towards developing the standards for 6G. This is what I'm trying to say here. So this is the onus is on us. This picture basically shows that this is how the data plans are basically developed by the mobile operators. They have a basic service, standard, enhanced, unlimited, depending upon the disposable income of the population. However, there is also it is possible to shift that curve so that they provide internet for free to everybody also, and we can call that that internet as internet light, which is a non-video internet, access to information that is non-video. Because non-video information consumes very little information, and that can be that can be given out for free. It's similar to the roads we have. We can walk on the road for free. We don't need to pay the license, but unless we have a motorized vehicle, we have to get the license, we have to pay for the petrol and so on and so forth. Similarly, in the internet, we need to have internet light where everybody can walk on the internet for free. So that's a thinking that we need to change among the regulators, and as we define the new set of standards. That's what I wanted to mention here. So this picture basically shows that this basically has the nomenclature GSM, UMTS, LTE, and 5G, and then 6G. The 6G ought to be about services and society, sustainability, to meet the sustainability development goals for the societal changes. How do we measure the indirect impact of the connectivity on the society? So, for example, if we make internet available for free, and people are using transport systems, or people are not going to work, it is reducing pollution. If it is reducing pollution, it is having quantifiable impact on the health of the people. So how do we have these kind of KPIs that we need to be innovating on? This picture basically shows that no matter what we do, we go to 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G, or whatever, the reality is that in 2020, 50% of the world connections are still 2G. This is the reality of the world. And we don't want to forget as we develop the new set of standards. So we have to keep that in mind. And that's why this webinar is so important for us to talk about. So these are some of the unique challenges for rural and remote connectivity that we all know. Low population density, sparse and clustered settlements, comparatively low income levels, remote and difficult to access regions, lack of education and exposure to absorb digital technologies, local cultural and political nuances. Just providing connectivity is not good enough. There are very unique cultural and political hindrances also for people to be using internet. And then there is a lack of power also in rural areas, especially in parts of Africa, and so on and so forth. And there are three main also reasons that the rest of the presentations will cover from the other panelists. There is a lack of value propositions. That we have this plethora of information available, but people are looking for good information related to education, how to have employment, how to have good health. Those are the good value propositions that we can call within digital public goods being made available free of cost. And human computer interaction, how do we make it easy for people to access applications by unique HCI interactions? And technology and capacity to absorb digital technologies that Vimal will talk about, and affordability is the last two barriers. I'll skip this slide because Vimal will touch upon some of these technical aspects, because we want to have the backhaul. Because backhaul is one of the biggest challenges, so we need to have technology which will be cost effective for and provide solutions for non-line of sight connectivity, spectrum, TV white space, long range Wi-Fi, because it's cheaper and affordable. And how do we have these clustered deployment of Wi-Fi and interconnect them through some gateway and through the hub and spoke type of
one more minute.
Yeah, okay. I'll skip this in the interest of time. So what do we do? Step one is, let's address every single human being by providing internet light. There is no reason why when somebody subscribes to a mobile operator, they automatically have access to internet light. Whether they change their, even if we go from one mobile operator to another mobile operator in a different region, they should have access to internet light. Because of subscription, there are no issues of authentication, about tractability, about worrying about somebody being doing unauthorized things. So they can always be tracked down. They can always be tracked. So we have a solution called Internet Lite. Those who are interested can look into this in the white paper that we have produced from the IEEE Feature Network Initiative Working Group white paper. And the last thing, most important thing, is national knowledge portals. We have to have national knowledge portals that should be made available free of cost. Means that those bytes and bits should not be counted in the data plans. That's the point we have. And this basically having some kind of a distributed knowledge portal right from the village level to the central government level. Okay, so I'll skip these, and this is the latest thing that people have been talking about in 5G, which is called 5G network slicing concept. And I think we need to strengthen this as we go to 6G, where we can think about internet light, walking on the internet as a slice on the internet, because we can divide internet logically, so that if you are connected to internet light slice of the internet, everybody has access to the information free of cost. So this is something that we ought to be promoting, and we need to be looking into how to do that. And then micro operator ecosystem we need to look into. This is the last slide, Sandeep, I have. For connecting the unconnected, IEEE Feature Network Initiative is having a second edition of a CTU Global Challenge in 2 months' time in November, which is IEEE Connecting the Unconnected Challenge, that is sponsored by IEEE. And then co-located with that is going to be the Connecting the Unconnected Summit. We have close to 250, 260 proposals from all over the world. We provide about 15 or so awards around the world just to promote solutions for connecting the unconnected. So those of you who are interested in joining this IEEE Future Network Initiative, Connecting the Unconnected initiative, we have a number of working group members who are very active. So we'll invite you to join this group. You can send me an email to me or my co-chair Ashutosh Datta, who is the co-founder and the co-chair of the Future Network Initiative, or send it to Sandeep and Munir, and we'll be glad to include you in our working group. With that, I'll stop here. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Sudhir, for such an in-depth presentation, and I'm pretty sure that the most of the content can be found in the book, as well as people can refer the CTU white paper to get an understanding of insight into connecting the unconnected and now the 6G aspect. So now, without wasting much time, I think we'll move to our next distinguished speaker, who is Professor Bimal Bhatia. So this time I will sort the bio and we will quickly go to the presentation part. So as we all know, Bimal Bhatia is currently working as professor with Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. For some of you, it's most prestigious technical institutes in India, and is an adjunct faculty at IIT Delhi and IIIT Delhi. He received his PhD degree from Institute of Digital Communication with the University of Edinburgh, UK in 2005. And during his PhD, he has received the EE Fellowship for Collaborative Research at Department of System and Computer Engineering, Carleton University, Canada, and is Young Faculty Research Fellow from MIT, Government of India. So along with that, I think there are lots of peer review papers, more than 300 peer review papers, 13 patents filed, 5 granted, and a list of projects which is being undertaken by Professor Bhatia, and projects which are completed, as well as projects which are in progress. So Professor Bhatia brings in-depth research background with respect to continuous research in wireless domain. And with this, I hand over to Professor Bhatia to take us through his presentation. Thank you. You are not audible.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I think I was muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting comfortable with WebEx. I'll just make a full screen now. So I hope you can hear me okay, right? My voice is clear?
Yes, your voice is clear. Some background noise is there, but still I think it's fine. You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep, for introduction, and of course, Munir and your team for organizing this. So I'll not take too much time to looking at the time constraint. So basically, I'm working with in Department of Electrical Engineering with IIT Indore, and also adjunct faculty with Bharati School at IIT Delhi, and adjunct faculty with ACE at IIIT Delhi, and visiting faculty with UHK. So I'll thank some of the work that has come out from our group is thanks to the funding from DST, SERB, Ministry of Education, MIT, UKRI, IUSSTF, Erasmus, and TFK in Finland. So what I would like to build upon what Sudhir was mentioning as well in the later part, that in many places the issues, what issues that we are seeing with 5G and beyond 5G. So some of them are known, but I'll just they'll be refreshed from this. So some, one of the major issues is power. So when it comes to good connection, because if you have to run a base station or you want to use a handset, you need a power supply. So they are all requiring at least some kind of power to source to be available, and that is one of the, I'll say one of the bottlenecks or something that we need to do, which is not okay, in the purview of as per se of the connectivity part, but this is a very important issue. And if you look at the map, there's a lot of places in especially in Africa where there's a lot of issues with the power connections, and the same again are detailed in the book. For instance, in India, we have a definition of 100% village have been electrified, but the definition, if you go deeper into definition, it says 10% of the household in every village are connected to the electric grid, and about 50% of times they should get electricity. But we need connectivity all the time. So what could be the ways to get around? So we see, fortunately in India and Africa and places where there's a lot of scope for solar as an alternative. So once we have these photovoltaic sources generating energy, we can then power our mobile phones, we can power our base stations, relay, or other technologies that will come in the future. Now, not limiting ourselves to only solar, there are other things as well, like wind energy and coastal, and there's a wind is very high in the hilly areas as well. So there's a lot of other alternatives that can be used. So power as such doesn't come into the communication aspect, but yes, it is an important thing. And I'll say from the research or looking forward, we saw 5G as a standard, mentioning that for the first time in a standard, mentioning that you should have a battery backup of or battery life of 10 years. Now in 6G, there's a talk of getting it to 20 years. Again, it will not be for all the applications. We a lot of us, we know when we are using our smartphones, we charge them at least once a day or sometimes even twice a day. So it depends upon type of application that we'll be using. But yeah, if we have backup power, renewable power, other sources, then that will help in the connectivity aspect. The other one issue is that's again covered in detail in the book, is on interference management. So we'll have radio interference from various sources. They are less in the I'll say in the rural areas, but still there is a problem that needs to be tackled. And there is a foliage losses are there much bigger in the rural areas. And some of the solutions that I'll discuss in a short while are what we are projecting for 6G and beyond. Again, maintenance of these equipments, again for rural and remote communities. So if we even install these equipment, and who's going to manage them and maintain them? That's another challenge in 5G and beyond. Resilience, of course, and I'll be discussing this in detail in the next presentations. Is if there is these rural or remote areas which are affected by earthquake, flood, landslide, a storm, or other natural calamities, then they need to be, the network needs to be backed up very fast. Then there are certain risks which are there's a financial risk as well for deployment. So that's one of the major reasons, and I think some places it has been some push from the government as well, that you need to be connecting in the unconnected. But then there are, again, there are certain things that like I think in Europe there's a talk about having a uniform, or everybody gets the same rate throughputs, which again technically may not be feasible, but still, yeah, there should be connectivity connect to them, and there should be at least a minimum guarantee that we can provide. Scalability, of course, as the population and our demands and our dependence on ICT infrastructure increases, the whatever solution we give has to be scalable, and that's where I still feel that 5G as limitations, but going beyond, when we look at beyond 5G and 6G technologies, that's where scalability is another thing that we are focusing on. So this is a slide borrowed from the 6G flagship, and we are working together, and this book is also coming out with the support from Ministry of Education support on Spark program, which we are doing with Sudhir and Mati on the 6G flagship and India together. So here, this slide from there. So it is again, as Sudhir has mostly covered part of this. So there are things like it has to be hyper local activity everywhere. Then a local specialization. So some of these things or contents that need to be locally stored, or they have local information which may not be required for others. So they can be made hyper local or local. And some of the technologies that we'll be we are looking at allow us to do this in 6G. It has to be wide, regional, global. That's always there in the overall requirements. So this again, I can possibly skip. I think this is covered by Sudhir in this talk. And yes, in 6G, the focus is driven through the SDGs. So what we saw in 5G, that it was from the industry verticals, and primarily three different types of, if I talk in technology terms, it was basically three different types of radios for three different broader applications for IoT, for ultra low latency or very high bandwidth, so throughput rate. So there were three different rates. So here the idea is to look from the SDG point of view, so how we can do energy decarbonization, either through enabling more of remote working, global environmental things, having a lot of IoT sensors around, giving us important information about our environment. And connectivity, of course, I mean, that is something that we cannot see in a lot of these. Whenever a new standard comes in, there is always an expectation that there will be a 10x increase in the data rates, and also that still remains. But we are seeing explosion in applications in agriculture, retail, logistics, industries 4.0, healthcare. In COVID, we saw a lot of these healthcare things come in. Now, with autonomous vehicle, automotive and transportation becoming again driverless, that's another thing that's coming in. Sustainable energy is what we discussed before, so helps in decarbonization of the environments. What are the technologies that will be driving 6Gs? So I'm mostly to focus on the wireless technologies here, and so here we look at MIMO. So MIMO we have been discussing for many years, since late 1990s. So slowly with the 5G we are seeing them coming in action. But in case of 6G we are expecting massive MIMO and beyond. So a lot of technical challenges are there, but still there are a lot of algorithms there, and it has to go up to a device level. That is still a challenge. But hopefully the 6G will be able to come over. Then TV white space, as so they also had in one of his slides, that yes, that has very high. I'm still quite hopeful. It was a technology which was very popular about 6-7 years ago in most geographies. In some places it has been made open or free or lightly licensed. So similar things, they can be done again, because with the digitization we saw a lot of these bands being made available, and we have the technology now to reduce the interference and things that should not affect the television viewers. So they can be used for communication because they are very good bands. They allow us a very large coverage. It can travel to larger distance. So yeah, it is ideal for rural and remote connectivity. Millimeter wave, that's coming for we hear about in 5G and 6G also. It is going to go
2 more minutes, please.
Beyond this thing. Thanks. Yeah, I'll just move forward. So millimeter wave wide. Yeah, so we are moving towards moving towards terahertz and those kind of communication system. This shows a small diagram of how the mesh connectivity is, and then millimeter wave for backhaul IAB type of connections. I'll skip this one. The spectrum refarming. Okay, of course, if you can use the same farms, and they can be used either less or more for depending upon your requirement in the rural areas. Beamforming with the with MIMO and moving towards millimeter wave and terahertz, that's one thing that's required. And that basically beamforming allows us to focus in one direction and reduce interference and things. So a lot of research work is going on here. Full duplexing, another technology that we didn't see make it to the 5G standard, but yeah, hopefully in the beyond we will see this is coming in where we can utilize the spectrum much better. And IRS, that's something it's a hot area of research at the moment in wireless, where we're using reflecting surfaces, and these surfaces are like a big, you can think of them like a big, billboard. They can be used for connectivity. We have actually there's another article in again that came out from the white paper that we published, and then so it's in IEEE Wireless Magazine that talks about. So Sudhir, myself, we were all co-authors there. It talks about we can extend this for connectivity as well, and this is a passive device, so we don't have to power these IRS. To redirect the signal to a different location where there's line of sight problem. And this is another area where we see a lot of work will happen. We have also done quite a bit of work on hexagonal QAM or different type of modulation schemes which are two-dimensional, more efficient than the current QAM schemes. Perhaps this is something which we hear a lot about, with technological developments, Elon Musk and others. So a lot of LEOs will be sent out, or balloons. They are using reflecting surfaces to do a larger coverage. So it'll be floating or moving in the air, and they'll be covering this, and they could be connected through a fully optical connection as well. So these are some we have discussed in detail in the book, some of the key references. Just pause here, and there's another one. And I'll suggest, in the book there's more details. Thank you very much indeed, and you can get in touch with me over email or LinkedIn after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bimal. First of all, to sticking the time. And very interesting talk and lots of technological aspect and the new research, some of the aspect which was also there in 5G, but now some of the new aspect which will be completely new while we go towards 6G. So thank you very much for your presentation. And now we'll move to our third speaker, Mr. Anuj Agrawal. So Anuj is a postdoctoral research fellow at Connect, the Center for Future Network and Communication, Department of Computer Science and Statistics, Trinity College, Dublin. So before joining Trinity, he was an early career research fellow at Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, India. He received his PhD in electrical engineering from IIT Indore, India in 2021. He was a visiting researcher at Center for Wireless Communication, University of Oulu, Finland in 2019. His research includes optical networks, quantum internet, multiple fibers, quantum classical coexistence, techno-economic analysis, and 6G for rural regions. So I think we are going to hear a lot about optical as part of his presentation. And he is also a member of multiple societies, to name few: Optica, Springer Nature, Elsewhere, Frontier, Willy. So with this, I invite Anuj, and really wonderful background, Anuj. So I really invite you to start your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for the nice introduction, for having me among these esteemed panelists. So I'll be focusing mostly on the networking perspective from the backbone to the point of presence. So far, from the technology perspective and from the sustainability perspective, the areas of interest or the regions of interest have mostly been towards the access region. So I'll just go through what goes in the backbone and how we are basically we are trying to if you can see my cursor, we are trying to connect a heart maybe or a hamlet to this earth, which is wrapped by the global submarine cables that is enabling the internet. So if we are talking now, and if I am in Ireland, Professor Sudhir is in US and others are in India, so our traffic is ultimately going through these submarine fiber optical cables and enabling us to connect. I am a postdoctoral research fellow at Connect Center, the Center for Future Networks at Trinity College Dublin. But since I've been working on this project, I've spent my days at IIT Gandhinagar, IIT Indore mostly, and University of Olu 60 flagship, and of course acknowledgements to Ministry of Education which funded this. So this is going to be the outline of my presentation. So like when we talk about connecting the unconnected, so there is some topic which I feel is usually left out when we discuss about 5G or 6G or any next generation technology or wireless network technology. So like I'll be focusing on how we are connecting the unconnected to what, and basically fiber plus wireless networks, and then I'll focus on some of the future aspects like reconnecting the disconnected, quantum network era, and will satellite networks replace the optical fiber. So we are basically trying to connect the unconnected rural and remote regions with the backbone optical network. So from this figure, you can see this is the ITU interactive transmission map, which shows how the world is connected through submarine fiber cables and these are steel fiber cables, and this is an animated view of how the Earth is wrapped by the optical fiber cables. So this is how the intercontinental communication is happening, and whoever we want to connect with the internet, we just want to connect them with one of these fiber terminating points, and then they'll be able to interact with anyone around the world. Okay, so how we are doing that? So basically, we are extending the fiber network, the existing fiber networks towards the rural regions, and as we are adding more and more, so this is the terrestrial optical network, an arbitrary, bit old RailTel network topology of India, and then towards the port cities we have submarine cables, and then landing at these which are called as landing stations. So what we are doing is to connect the rural and remote regions, we are deploying a lot of fiber and basically passive optical network, which has this star kind of topology. And so we are connecting all the unconnected regions with the existing backbone region, which is using the major national long distance providers of India. So this is I'm taking as an example Indian context, but this is applicable to almost all the countries. So RailTel, BSNL, and PowerTel, we are using the backbones of these three providers currently, and because of adding more and more branches to the backbone network, there is a capacity crunch in the backbone networks, and there have been a lot of papers and a lot of studies on how to increase the capacity of the backbone networks. And in submarine cables, there are already operators like Facebook and Google. They are already considering the space division multiplexing, which is one of the most promising solutions to scale the optical network capacity to a large extent. So solutions to capacity crunch are the simplest solution is to deploy more fibers along the existing routes. So here I'm talking about the backbone one. So we can add more fibers to it, which sometimes is not possible. Space division multiplexing, that is exploiting the space domain of the optical fiber, that is through multi-fiber or multi-core or multi-mode. Multi-band transmission, so we are using just a small bandwidth of optical fiber right now, that is the conventional band, and there are proposals to use the other bands as well, like L band and S band as well. Another solution is backbone network densification. So instead of adding fibers along the existing routes, we can densify this as well, and then we can have more dense network and drop points at various places available, so that we don't need to deploy more and more passive optical networks or longer passive optical networks. The other thing is software-defined networking and using network function virtualization, things like that, to have efficient network planning and dynamic operation to reduce the resource consumption and utilize the resources more efficiently. Okay, so as an example, let us take a look at what happens at the other end, at the point of present towards the village area. So this is a plan of fiber deployment in a place called Bhagwanpura, which we visited, as a part of this project, which is in the district Khargone in MP, which is near to Indore. So we visited these places, the highlighted places, and so this is passive optical network deployment. That is, so no active component involved in between, and it is having star topology, like as shown in the previous figure, and we are using the existing backbone network of NLDs like BSNL, Grid, and PowerTel. So what we observed while visiting this place is, so we were somewhere here and we saw this hamlet of about 40 mud houses which were not a part of this map, and we were not getting any signals there, and there was not even any plan to connect this hamlet with the fiber. So that's why wireless communication is very important. So when the fiber terminates, it's very important for the wireless networks to carry on and provide the last mile connectivity, and also the backhaul connectivity where fiber is difficult to deploy because of difficult terrains or extreme weather conditions. So basically, there are three approaches to connect the rural and remote regions in the literature. So first one is the fiber backhaul, which we have just discussed. Second one is, for example, if there is fiber deployment is either not cost effective, or it is difficult because of the terrain conditions or the extreme weather conditions. We can have a microwave link backhaul, or if that is also not possible, then we can have satellite backhaul. And there are possibilities in remotest regions like rural, like polar regions where even satellite do not provide coverage. So we can have something like drones as moving access points to connect someone at the ship. And in the polar regions, in some of the regions, we don't see any future of increasing bandwidth demands, such as in the polar regions where we can have things like balloon base station, the technologies that covered by Professor Vati in the last talk. So, but most of the proposals talk about architecture like Google 5G, which we are having the co-chair of this standard as Professor Dr. Sandeep here as well. So what we are doing here is basically we are connecting fiber to fiber as a backhaul, and at a gram panchayat, or we can say we can say a group of villages can be called as gram panchayat. So that at that block level we are having fiber, and then we are connecting the small villages using the microwave link backhaul, and then we are connecting the villages. And there are possibilities like as outlined in the previous presentation, that there is a possibility that there may not be power. So there are proposals like everything on the tower by Newtown, where we can have solar panels and batteries to run the base stations, and then but ultimately here also we'll be having backhaul using either fiber or through the satellite or through.
You have 3 more minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is how the current proposals are, and looking towards the future, one of the factors to look upon is how to reconnect the disconnected. For example, I'm taking an example of a remote island called as Tonga, which is a Pacific island, and on 15 January 2022, the only undersea cable which connects to it was damaged because of the volcanic eruption, and it took 5 weeks to repair them, and the island was almost isolated from the world. And the cable repair ship was about 4,700 kilometers away, and it took about 10 days to reach to the place, and then the repair happened. So this is an important aspect, and the solution to this is to have disaster-aware equipment placement, and there have been a lot of proposals. And if you talk about like when to do this, I would say the best time to do that was 20 years ago, when the optical fibers were starting to deploy, and the better time is now. Another aspect is the quantum network era. So there are a lot of quantum fundings, being generated all around the world, and a lot of efforts are being put. So I'll just focus on the on the sustainability aspect of the quantum network. So basically, what we have seen is mostly people talk about quantum key distribution because that is the only technology that is possible now. But it is there are very strong views about about quantum key distribution that it will never be used, and post quantum cryptography is better solution because it is compatible with the mobile solutions and the current classical signal processing and other things. So the major drivers for quantum networks is the distributed quantum computing because so it's not just resource sharing what is happening in the cloud computing. It is that if the sharing happens, the quantum computing power increases exponentially with qubits. So if it is 5 bits here, 5 bits here, then it will be exponential 10. So if we are increasing the bits, if we are sharing the resources, the computing power will increase exponentially. So in the quantum computing era, because the quantum computer is so powerful, it is necessary to secure the network as well. So for rural and remote networks, even if they are not having access to advanced technologies like quantum computing, they should be at least secure because digitally illiterate people are more prone to these attacks, and they need to be secure.
1 more minute, please.
Yeah, I have just one more slide after this. So a huge impact on sustainability is the quantum computers are a trillion times more energy efficient than the supercomputers. So one aspect is quantum computers can solve the problem which the existing classical computers, supercomputers cannot solve. And the other aspect is they are a trillion more times efficient, more energy efficient. So with the technologies like machine learning, deep learning, blockchain, mining, and all, it takes a lot of power. So quantum computer with whenever any new technology comes, generally what happens is the general notion is that it will consume more power, it will not be nature friendly, but that is not the case with the quantum computing or the quantum networking. Other sustainability aspects are leveraging renewable sources and generating green energy solutions, and then preserving culture and traditions of the rural communities, which Professor Sanjana will be focusing on. So I'll conclude with this slide. Usually there has been a debate over the internet and fiber versus wireless. So one view is this, where the world is connected through fibers, and the other view is this, where there is a constellation satellite which will be enabling the internet. So it is not fiber versus wireless, either this or this. It is this plus this. So hearing from the founder of Starlink, the statement of his is it is probably able to serve only 3 to 5% of the people in the world, because but it is not actually ideal for high density cities. It is really to serve the unserved or the poorly served, and which is why we have one of these solutions to provide rural connectivity as well. So yeah, so I'll conclude with this, and the major point I want to discuss, I want to mention here is it is going to be fiber plus wireless, and they are always going to complement each other and enable the connectivity, whether it is 5G, 6G or beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anuj, for discussing in detail about the importance of fiber plus wireless to connect the unconnected. So with this, we will now quickly move to Dr. Sanjaram Premjit, who works as human factor research practitioner. He currently holds an academic position as an associate professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. So he has been working in the field of human-computer interaction (SCI) for last 15 years. He earned his PhD from IIT Bombay, an MSc degree from Bangalore University. So his research involves around investigating aspects of applied cognition in system development, design, and evaluation. So now going forward in his talk, we are going to see a completely different aspect of sustainability, which is far beyond technology, but more towards the adoption of the technology in the rural areas, and what are the challenges which we are going to face there. So without taking much time, I invite Dr. Sanjram to take us through his talk. Thank you.
Just a second, I just got a quick technical glitch.
We can see your slide.
We cannot hear.
Yeah, audio is not there.
Sanjram, you are not audible.
Okay, is that audio issue?
Yeah. Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I was
I think audio is missing. We are able to see the slide, but audio is missing.
okay. I think the embedded audio recording is having some issue. Can it be played from the backup file?
Yeah, Munir, can we play the file?
I will stop sharing.
Sanjam, do you want me to play the recording? I think it would be better if you can talk about it.
Okay, okay. Okay, I start the slide again and see how. So slide is visible now, right?
Right, slide is visible.
And my voice is audible?
Yes, your voice is also audible.
Okay, I think the problem is the embedded audio was not working, I guess. That's okay. So
you can go into full slide. Yeah, I think it's full slide.
So am I still audible?
Yes.
Okay. So what I would be talking about is related to HCI issues and in rural context. So I thank all other speakers for covering technical aspects. So I have organized my talk in terms of 7 thematic points. So different requirements, services, and users, distinctions, binaries, priorities and key considerations, and sociocultural aspects, misinformation and cooperation in summary, and with respect to different requirements and services and users, if we look at the way we function in the society, there are different activities that we do, and different people are there requiring different services. And that also classifies the different user pools that we have. It could be male, female, people who are living in urban areas, etc. And there are different people in urban, suburban, and rural areas. So there are certain distinctions that we need to understand. So what is important in terms of understanding distinction is that the degree of what a particular group of users have and have access to, and what they don't, will determine what we are supposed to be doing in terms of our strategic focus. So that will be the principal guiding line for us. And that aspect cannot be addressed from the narrow understanding of conventional HCI, because that social reality is much more complex, and it's much broader than interfaces, displays, and input devices that we often talk about in the design community when we talk about system design. So there are certain binaries that we cannot ignore. So poor versus rich, people with disability versus without disability, privileged versus underprivileged group of people, people even who are living a sheltered life, say shelter homes, etc., versus mainstream life. There's a distinction. There are issues related to trust and distrust. There are issues about digital literacy, etc. as well. However, when we talk about digital transformation, there are certain priorities that we have to really be very serious about when it comes to harnessing the potential of digital technology. Because the primary reason behind the current state of digital divide is the unavailability of ICT infrastructure in rural and remote areas. And why do we have to change the status quo? Regardless of how difficult the task is, wider efforts to reduce inequality is necessary for the global society to grow and improve the quality of life. And what are the concrete results that connecting the unconnected approach will bring to the world is that with a universal perspective, closing the gap is one of the greatest equalizers in promoting equality, and the role digital technologies have played during COVID-19 itself is a case in point. We cannot emphasize that enough, because we know that during pandemic, we experienced lockdown, etc., and without internet, our life would have been very difficult. There are certain issues what we can act on concretely in terms of achieving connectivity in rural areas. So the key considerations, apart from what we often talk about, affordability, etc., we need to start looking at how do we optimize or leverage touch and display, because touch is well understood, and in recent time, touch and display system has become more cost optimized, and speech and gesture-based inputs are very important, and they are quite advantageous to integrate both gyro-based gestures with voice commands. Also, visual gestures can also be leveraged by the built-in camera to enable biometric authentication, etc. And HCI for people with disability is something I would like to keep talking about whenever I get the opportunity, because these individuals need empowerment, and the idea of connecting the unconnected needs to address these people as well, because they have their own requirements. We need to customize, even though it's a niche area. there are serious concerns that we have to address. All humans have limitations and capabilities. When it comes to designing systems from HCI perspective, we have to ensure that those, because of disability, those who are suffering are also not left out. There are three key issues that I want to talk about when it comes to sociocultural barriers. Motivation is one thing. When we promote connecting the world, not necessarily everyone is motivated to participate. And when I say that not everyone is motivated to participate, it's not necessarily related to people who are living in rural areas, but also in urban setting. Let's say in developing countries, there are many people who are migrant workers. What motivation do they have? How would we motivate them to get connected? Because if the services provided are not oriented towards their needs in terms of what they do in their day-to-day affairs, they will not be motivated to have the uptake of technology. They will not adopt. And there is urban bias that we need to address, because most of the technology that we develop are with the perspective of urban requirements. And quite often, technologies that we develop and bring from the developed countries to developing countries or underdeveloped countries, it may not match and connect with the community very well. And what we need to understand is that as we are developing more technologies, and if we do not address that urban bias, we are by default not addressing the requirement of a large number of people. Because if we take the case of India, for example, our urban coverage in terms of geographical allocation of proportion is very different. Our country largely lives in suburban and rural areas, and we do lots of cultivation, etc. But in case of misinformation, it's a very serious issue, because while we are waiting for the arrival of 6G, or when it arrives, what we need to think about is that what are the concerns that we have already experienced in terms of misinformation. There have been cases, people protesting against deployment of 5G or implementation of it. So misinformation is a very serious issue, so I want to discuss separately about that. So the myths concerning network towers and associated radio frequency exposure is a case in point, because many people still believe that the network radio frequency exposure is hazardous to health and it leads to cancer, etc. But the point is that the misinformation that new generation of network health has triggered various misconceptions in among people. And there should be no room for users to mistakenly equate 5G or 6G with negative effect on their health due to the radio frequency radiation emitted by towers, etc. So what we need to do is to sensitize people. We have to bust these myths, and it should not be delayed for the benefit of all. If we are talking about achieving the benefit of new generation of network technology. Apart from that, there are concerns in terms of, say, security, for example. And
you have 2 more
thinking
minutes.
that, okay, internet use leads to some kind of, say, addiction, etc. Of course, there is issue related to screen time and things like that that needs to be addressed, but the wrong unscientific understanding should be removed. But last issue that I want to cover is the cooperation and summary. Cooperation is something that we have to achieve by consolidating all the efforts in a concerted manner. Private players, industry, government, civil societies, researchers, and communities need to be involved. And I often would like to emphasize the community aspect because when we talk about rural areas, the community system is very important. And the socio-cultural barriers should be very seriously emphasized in terms of how we promote the technology. At the same time, we address what are the simple questions they have. It might be silly, but we have to address that. And those who need to improve digital skills should get the required support across the world. And in summary, those who work in the field of community systems need to play a major role. We have to include more people who are having a kind of liaison between technology implementation and those who work on the ground and doing field work, etc., and understand the community interest, because once we understand the community interest by involving ethnographic research and community system research, we would be able to understand the requirement of customizing the services and also develop possible mechanism for small businesses or micro business, what we call it. And that will be important from the perspective of championing the framework of universal inclusion as well, because perspectives like co-design and community-involved system design, etc., can be practiced very successfully, and usability as an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjaram.
Yeah, sorry about that hiccups.
Not an issue. I think it's a very, very interesting presentation where we talk about people and more about people and less about technology. So thank you very much. And in the paucity of time, I think we will take one moderated question and one question from Q&A. So I request all the speakers to, on their video, so that we can take one question as a moderated question. So the question which I keep asking in multiple discussions is, whenever we talk about rural connectivity, we have seen that globally the universal service obligation agencies has been investing heavily on creating rural broadband infrastructure. Like if in India, we say there is a national optical fiber network, and similarly in all other underdeveloped and developing countries, such programs are being taken up so that the initial investment for last mile technology deployment can be brought in low. But in reality, whenever we see the utilization of such infrastructure like fiber pipes terminating at locations are very low. The utilization of these particular rural infrastructure is very low. So these pipes are not filled with data. It is yet to see how 5G will be able to fill these underutilized pipe. So my question to the panel is this a technological challenge, or it is an absence of meaningful use cases in affordable cost? And how 6G can address such challenge of existing infrastructure being utilized optimally to meet the need of the rural folks? So who want to take the step first? So it's open to all. We have around 3-minute time to get your thoughts. Thank you.
So Sandeep, this is Sudhir here. I will go first. So I'd like to make 3 points. One of them is that at least in the case of India, you have fiber going to the Gram Panchayat, but that is an office which sometimes is not open. It's a room with the desks and computers, but not accessible to the villagers. So I think the most important point is what Sanjram was talking about, that you really need to use some means to broadcast to the village houses directly. Just don't terminate it there. Reach out directly to the user community and bypass that location, that physical location. That's number one that has to happen. Number two is we need to develop this micro operator or micro entrepreneur ecosystem, where this person or this set of individuals can promote the internet and the services that are available that meets the needs of the local users, because a local resident is much more is better placed to advertise, to bring them onto the internet than some remote operator or service provider. So we need this promotion of this micro operator ecosystem in the village with some incentive, some credit mechanism, or so on and so forth. But of course, this micro entrepreneur would need to be audited. There should be enough accounting information gathered as to how many new users have been activated, how many bytes have been transferred back and forth. So there should be some kind of an accounting system to track what the improvement is. So that's the micro entrepreneur from the area itself is a must. And the third thing is getting around this issue of security, misinformation, because a lot of these people living in rural areas and remote areas, they are very innocent, who can be exploited. So some of the content needs to be curated. We need to have information available locally from the server and make sure that these people are not taken advantage of with their empty bank balances and things like that. So some of these things need to happen for it to have traction in the rural community. And fourth is locally relevant content should be there. Whereby people can upload their own content in the local servers through the micro entrepreneur who does the job of curating the content, making sure it is accurate, and so on and so forth. And I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Sudhir. So other thoughts on this particular, context?
Yeah.
What Sudhir said, from the technological point of view, we will like to have the fibers all being utilized to the full extent that they have been developed for. So if we have wireless connectivity after, so the job doesn't end by putting a fiber in one location. There has to be connectivity of the local region, and that's what we are seeing. One of the objectives or things that are being discussed in the 6G as well, of hyper local things. So there'll be there is a need also, if you have this backbone which is coming from optical fiber, there's enough bandwidth, so there can be the network slicing. So these are some of these technologies which are happening in the optical world, also in the wireless world as well. So we can have this elastical optical network. So there's not a fixed allocation. So these are flexible allocations of the bandwidth and resources based on the need. Some of the contents can be heavy contents can be moving around in the evening or off peak times, and maybe at other times it can be used for education or other purposes. So there has to be a better optimal resource utilization of these things, and hopefully in the 6G it will be much better than what is currently happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimal. So any other thought?
I just want to add on, there are some simple solutions, not purely from the technology perspective, because I am not looking at it from pure technology perspective. Like Professor Shuri mentioned, internet line. If we bring that perspective, irrespective of the existing technology. If that is already adopted as a kind of agenda, and at state level, district level, if we start circulating that agenda, and if the materials are available, if not for their individual activities that they do, but for reaching out to the citizens in terms of providing the e-government services and something that they can actually start appreciating, by default, the uptake of technology will follow. Because once I start using internet, for example, and I find the benefit, I would start appreciating. So that space has not been created, according to me, in many developing countries. And that requires that community interaction, co-designing perspective. And that is what I was talking about, mainly the urban bias and things like that. And we need to gather more momentum around that aspect of groundwork. I think technology, according to me, is there.
Okay, one last point I would like to make, I was hoping Dr. Sanjaram would have touched on. He talked about the socio-cultural aspect and these rural areas. And as we all know, knowledge is power. So there has to be a buy-in with the village head, because once you bypass the village head and empower the people, these people are losing power. So sometimes there are impediments. So how do you get them on board? Because if people are empowered with knowledge, this village head is going to become less powerful, you know. So there is this socio-cultural aspect whereby villagers, they feel threatened with having information and bypassing him or her. So that is a reality on the ground. Not a nice thing to say, but this is the ground reality also.
Yes. That we have experienced when we were doing the fieldwork activities as well. You know, they were not giving away things, and there are various government programs whereby bank accounts are operated by the representative, and not the customer is operating the bank accounts, and those things are also there. I mean, that's a very serious issue.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll hear from Anuj, and then we'll take one question and we'll close the webinar. So Anuj, your thoughts?
I think the question has been covered very well, but I would like to add one more point from the technology perspective. So as we are deploying the optical fibers, we are basically deploying a very old technology which is called as passive optical network technology. And there have been a lot of proposals which do not require a lot of, there is no additional cost to, just modify the network topology. For example, converting the star into mesh. So that way we can, improve the failures, the availability, and we can reduce the length of the fiber as well. So, there have been proposals about mesh connectivity. I think, we can have a look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. So I think this one question, we had lots of, debate and many inputs. So one question which we'll take from a participant, and I have noted all the questions which we'll try to, provide the answer offline. So one question, I think it will go directly to Sudhir. With respect to sustainability, do you think out of multiple pillars which you talked, political will can be included as one of the pillars to connect the unconnected?
Very good point. I think political will has to be there, but the challenge always there is that the political leadership can much with their public programs and investment. But the most important thing is this grass level movement that people need to be made aware of. They need to be requiring what the government should be doing. The requirement of meeting those 3 or 4 or 5 pillars should they should become the election points, for the candidates to be elected on. until that happens, government can do only so much. That's point number one. And number two, the governments also need to learn to quantify the benefits of those pillars in dollars and euros or rupees or whatever. The market does not move, or the businessman doesn't act unless they see the financial gain. This is the reality also. So if there is a policy, and if you are saving greenhouse effect, greenhouse gas emissions, or some other advantage, providing more better literacy and so on and so forth, there is a way to quantify those things in money terms, and how it affects a particular industry sector or industry vertical. And that will move the businessman. So we have to learn to quantify the social metric into money terms. Once we do that, then you will see a faster uptake on some of these of the social policies, and people adapting to it from the ground.